lot of information out there, but certainly AAF, of course, Advancing American Freedom, has put together what they call the One Big Beautiful Binder, 60 key reforms in the One Big Beautiful Bill. And, of course, our fine friend Richard Stern joins us, Vice President, Plymouth Institute for Free Enterprise, a person who has been a congressional staffer, understands how they need information, how they can get it. Hey, this is a really good idea, Richard.
Hey, thank you so much. I really appreciate you and appreciate you having me on today to talk about this project from the whole team at AAF.
Yeah, so when we look at this, one of the things that I find interesting, be able to get information to the congressional people, what are the key things that you guys looked at as a team? What were you looking to make sure that was in this binder so certainly the congressional representatives could take from that and start looking at legislation?
Absolutely. So, what we started with was saying, for all the reasons you brought up and we all know, this bill is really amazing. It achieved so many great new things, but also it avoided a several trillion-dollar tax hike on the American public. So where do you begin? We started by saying, what are the biggest myths that the other side, that the haters are saying about the bill? And we wrote one-pagers to dispel those myths. And then we went through and said, okay, then what are the most major provisions? And we ended up with 60. That's not absolutely everything in the bill, but it's not, just the top 5 or 10. It's 6 of the top provisions. But, we went through really with a careful eye and said, what's the most impactful to, this industry or these groups of people or this part of the country, and ended up with that list. And then we wrote 1- and 2-page memos on each of them. They're clear, they're crisp, they're useful if you're a congressional staffer. Mm-hmm. Frankly, they're useful if you're just somebody who's not in politics, but you just want to know, hey, what did my representative do in this bill? And so the idea was to make it not too wonky, not too granular, but really comprehensive of everything that the vast majority of people would ever want to know about the bill.
Well, the other thing, too, Richard, when you think about it, the ability for you guys to go ahead and put this binder together, it's coming right near the midterms. And a lot of times, not to say that most congressional people don't know how to form their message. You've worked with them. You know that sometimes they're just not really sure what is the clarity that when they get ready for the midterms or when they're still kind of finalizing some key aspects of legislation that is supported by the One Big Beautiful Bill, they haven't put it in picture. Speak to a little bit about your past experience. When somebody gets a binder like this or when somebody gets a one-pager like this, how do they typically use it in their office and then when they get ready to go back out to their constituents?
So I think this is an essential point of this. And as you pointed out, I worked on the Hill for 7 years in the House of Representatives for a few different members of Congress. And what I can tell you, and it's not, unique to Congress, but it is really rare, is that Congress is the focal point. Everybody wants your time. Everybody wants to get your attention. And so part of the life of a congressional staffer is being absolutely flooded with phone calls, letters, requests for meetings, all kinds of material, all kinds of things. You've got to be on the tip of your toes. You've got to know everything that's going on at every minute. Frankly, no one can do that. The most capable people on the planet really can't do all that. So what members of Congress and their staff are looking for, what's really most helpful, is not when you're trying to get their attention to cajole them, to get them to do something, but when you can give them something that can help them summarize what are the key points, what are the key asks, what are the key things to remember about it. And so I took that experience I had of knowing, what would have been helpful to me as a staffer, running from meeting to meeting when you're meeting with, an ag group now and you're going to meet with rural hospitals later, what would have helped me? And that was the entire mindset that my team and I had as we went through and assembled the project. And so, it's a unique set of experiences, but if you've got that, you know exactly how to give them the materials so they can help represent their constituents as best as possible and really be the best representatives and the best staffers for them, really, that all of us deserve.
Well, and once again, we're talking to Richard Stern, of course, Vice President, Plymouth Institute for Free Enterprise over at Advancing American Freedom as well. This is an incredible. I'm going to make sure I post a link up online, guys. You should really be looking at this. You know what I do find interesting, Richard? You guys really did lay this out really well. Just like tax savings accounts, reform for businesses and business owners, fundamental rights. It is great going in there because at the beginning of the year, and I know you heard this too, Richard, affordability, right? We heard it everywhere. Affordability this. I think the message has clearly been certainly hijacked a little bit about other issues. Not that those issues aren't important. I think, when you look at this booklet, this help returns everybody. And in fact, I have no doubt Democrats are going to read this as well. It helps return everybody back to those impactful issues that really affect the kitchen table. That's a brilliant concept.
Well, I really appreciate your praise of that, and thank you for you'll put the link to it on your website. That was kind of the idea. The way I've been describing it, we've been running around Congress, meeting with staffers. We've been talking to people on outside groups, but frankly, I've also been talking to my family members who don't do politics at all, and saying to them, does this explain things? Frankly, like the Trump accounts, that's something where, everybody who's got a small child, or if you're expecting kids, you can open up those accounts. The Dells right behind Dell Computers are giving $6.25 billion to help fund seed cash for 25 million, American children. And part of the idea of this booklet is to make all that available to people. If you're a small business owner, in Florida, where I'm from, originally, you can pick this up. You can go online and look at the one-pager we've got. It's a two-page memo, but on just the small business income deduction, it's in the bill. And you can read all about how it works. And it's not, it's not, fluff, but it's not a giant, 20-page tome per thing. It's 2 pages. But every small business owner in America can read that and say, I know exactly what's accessible to me. And it's that for every provision.
Yeah, it is quite interesting too, because once again, I know some of the guys are getting ready to go out campaigning as well, and when they get to that door, they can use this booklet really to bring people back to, well, what are you experiencing? What are some of the issues? Oh, did you know that this was part of the legislation last year? Let me tell you a little bit about that. I can't say enough about this, Richard. I think politicians and people running for office need a little bit of guidance, and this certainly brings them to the right place. I know you're short for time. Final thoughts on this, and we'll post it up online. Always a pleasure to talk to you, Richard.
Always a pleasure. And again, thank you. It's an honor to be on your show to talk about this. And, I think you're right. We all know the politics has become a lot of talking points. It's become a lot of fluff on both sides, really all sides. And, part of what we've got as a duty at a think tank is to do the thinking, right? Is to put out things that are not just talking points, but really get to the heart of the matter. What really is what happened? What's really important? Why did people sit around for years working on what ultimately became this one big, beautiful bill? And that's why we put this resource together, exactly for those reasons, so that anybody and everybody with any kind of an interest in it can really get to the heart of what actually happened, what does it do, why did good people put this together, and why it matters in your life for affordability and a million other reasons. So thank you again so much for having me on today.
Yeah, outstanding. I'll let that be the last word. Once again, Richard Stern, we post this information up online as well. And you've heard us talk about this book. You guys know how I like to discuss policy, how I always say attack the policy, not the person. This really gives you an opportunity to see what kind of policy points everybody should know about and learn about as well. Richard, you have a great rest of the day. We'll chat with you.